And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live cast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very, very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, and finally broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday back in Sheridan, Wyoming. Thank God. Well, the truth is, I'm not here for long. Tomorrow, I have to, well, actually today, I'm back out on the road, and we'll be broadcasting from a undisclosed location tomorrow and Wednesday. But, after being in the swamp for a month, I have to tell you, I will take every minute that I can here. So anyway, welcome to the program, my friends. I'm happy to be here. Happy Tuesday. We begin this morning with fake news. Well, actually not fake news, fake documents, and not even really fake documents, but documents that somebody is trying to turn into a political story, but it's not really happening. And I'm speaking of none other than Reed Reisner, the guy who was able to do one thing that no other candidate in the last 10 years in the state of Wyoming has been able to do. And that is to unite the entire state of Wyoming behind one thing. One person, really. Unite them against him, against Reed Reisner. Now, the truth is, in the 2024 election, Reed lost to Senator John Barrasso by an overwhelming, a shocking amount of votes. He didn't win a single county. Now, I don't know how you do that. I mean, even the most wayward of candidate ought to be able to pull off maybe his own county. But there again, Reed's from Casper. So, Casper's kind of big, so maybe winning that one is a little bit far. But maybe one of the other counties, Niobrara, for example, or perhaps Hot Springs or Washakie. But nope, not Reed. He didn't pull off a single county in the 2024 election. But he's trying a new tactic. And that is to try to trump up a story about, and by the way, did you see his ridiculous video he did when he was doing the stupid Trump dance and he looked like a complete and total buffoon? Anyway, so Reed has this post out, and I just noticed this morning, a couple of days ago. I noticed his response this morning, and he's claiming that the LLC documents that bear the signature, although a reproduction, of Secretary of State Chuck Gray. And he's trying to say that these Chinese companies that were formed in Wyoming, that Chuck somehow invited them in. Well, the truth is, when you file for an LLC in Wyoming, the certificate and the documents are automatically generated. And so it doesn't matter what LLC you file. It's not like Secretary Gray sits behind his desk and says, oh, yeah, this was a good one, sign it. No, he doesn't do that. Those documents are automatically generated. So what Reisner is trying to do is say that these Chinese companies, that Chuck Gray himself personally approved of them. And that's not at all true. But there are other documents that are not trumped up, that are not a figment of Reed Reisner's imagination, that are not something that was just pulled out of the blue and, somebody attempted to make something out of another thing. No, there is one document that Reed is well aware of that is absolutely genuine, and that the original does bear his original signature, and that is a marriage certificate issued by a court in Manhattan where Reed married a man. Not even kidding you, my friends. Reed was wed to another man, and they got married in Manhattan. And if you search enough, and I believe I've got a copy of it on cowboystatepolitics.com, I'll have to go look it up, but it's absolutely true. There's a marriage certificate where Reed married a man. Now, there's one document that perhaps Reed should pay more attention to and not try to make something out of nothing. I got to tell you, my friends, there's a whole bunch of fun stuff about Reed Reisner that we could talk about. And interestingly enough, during the 2024 election, when I found this little marriage certificate, where he married a man. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you can marry a tree for a fish, or for all I care. But in Wyoming, in conservative Wyoming, when you are going around the state talking about family values and traditional Wyoming values, it doesn't really jive that you were married to a dude. Maybe you should have sought a career in the film industry, perhaps an extra on Brokeback Mountain, but you didn't. You entered politics, and now all those documents will soon again be available for all to see. Anyway, my friends, just politics is funny. And we have to laugh at it. And if you want to laugh at some really funny stuff, you need to go to Gillette on April 18th. The Campbell County Republican women are hosting Kyle Mann of the Babylon Bee. He's a really funny guy. And we've just been through a pretty contentious legislative session. And so if you want to laugh at some politicians, go to their website, campbellcountyrepublicanwomen.com, and you can get tickets to their event. It's April 18th. Kyle Mann from the Babylon Bee. We begin this morning, really begin this morning, instead of making fun of Reed Reisner, with the governor. And you probably saw that he used his line item veto on a number of things in the budget. Now, this is a piece from the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, and it's entitled, Governor Vetoes Pieces of State Budget. Lawmakers Override 4. And I quote, after weeks of crafting a budget to fund state government for the next 2 years, Governor Mark Gordon vetoed several portions of Wyoming lawmakers' compromise proposal. Following transmission of his veto letter late Thursday night, the House and Senate met separately on Friday to vote on possible overrides of the governor's vetoes. Overrides require a 2/3 majority of each chamber, and four out of the 7 proposals approved by the Senate passed in the House to restore those sections of the spending plan. While approving most of the biennial budget, Gordon took issue with how the legislature approached the constitutional role of the legislative branch for funding items like the University of Wyoming state employees and the Wyoming Business Council. All right, so this one is a biggie here, my friends, because in Wyoming, the governor has part of them are is energy matching funds, but really it all boils down to the governor having control of one big giant slush fund. And it's funds that are absolutely at his discretion, and he can dole them out wherever he wants. And we're not talking a small amount of money here. The last big tranche of cash that was dumped into this pile was a little over $300 million. So $300 million. Now, why would the governor want control? Why would he want the executive branch to have control over the University of Wyoming and the Wyoming Business Council? Well, it's so the governor can pick winners and losers, because that is everything that this whole deal is wrapped up in. You see, the governor has made it his mission to award taxpayer money to companies who should otherwise be able to support their endeavors on their own. But instead, the governor wants to be able to dole that cash out to his pals. Now, before you say, now, David, hold on a minute, you're accusing the governor of playing political favorites. Let me just explain this. Mark Gordon has a history of doing this. One of the first ones that comes to mind is awarding then Secretary of State Ed Buchanan with a judgeship Yeah, a nearly a lifetime appointment. And the reason why I say that is most judges never really have to worry about being retained. So the governor really liked what Ed Buchanan did there. And then, of course, there was the appointment to the Supreme Court of Bridget Hill. Bridget Hill, who has never been a judge, has never really tried that many cases at all, was nominated by the Judicial Nominating Commission, which, by the way, don't forget that during the State of the Judiciary address, the Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court addressed my podcast. I have to tell you, I mean, there are times when you know that you've made it, my friends, and that was one of them. Anyway, so the governor gave Bridget Hill an appointment to the Wyoming Supreme Court. So don't think for a second that Governor Gordon isn't above rewarding his pals, because that's what he's been doing. Now, the Wyoming Business Council is an interesting one, and we've talked about that a lot on the program, that is the very definition of picking winners and losers. It was not that long ago that Representative Tom Kelly shared a post on his social media of the Kickstart program from the Wyoming Business Council. And essentially what that was is businesses would compete for state funding, for taxpayer dollars. So they literally are picking winners and losers, and they don't have a very good track record of picking people that are businesses that are going to succeed. Probably the worst example of that is Cody Labs, where we dumped a bunch of taxpayer money into that, and overnight, 80 people lost their jobs when Cody Labs pulled out. And then there was the Berry Farm in Laramie, which Josh Durrell has tried to explain away over and over, that it wasn't a loss of $20 million. Well, the company went bankrupt, and you initially put in $20 million, and however the math works out, it doesn't really matter. Your company went bankrupt, dude. But my point is that the Wyoming Business Council is well in line with the governor's record of picking winners and losers. Now, the University of Wyoming is a different case because the governor is claiming that is a function of the executive branch when really it wasn't. It was the legislature that created the University of Wyoming, or at least our current incarnation of it. The university actually existed before statehood, but it was the legislature that put the University of Wyoming into the Constitution using setting it up as a land grant university. It is the legislature that the University of Wyoming goes to for continued funding. It is the legislature that the University of Wyoming, at least in part, is accountable to. It is the legislature's Joint Appropriations Committee that the University of Wyoming has to go to every year and ask for cash. So don't tell me for a second that it is not the legislature's role to dictate funding to the University of Wyoming. They are, after all, they do, after all, have the power of the purse, as they ought to. All right, my friends, let's take our first break, and when we come back, I'll tell you a little bit more about some of those other vetoes. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listened to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program only continues to expand. It's amazing, my friends. Every day I look at the numbers and they keep going up. Welcome back to the show, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself, much to the chagrin of many, many in the mainstream Wyoming media, which is where we're going now. To date, the open range record has forced two retractions of the mainstream Wyoming press. Now, if you'll notice, and perhaps you haven't, because maybe you just don't pay attention to these things, but typically when a newspaper or news outlet is wrong, they issue a retraction, try to correct the record, because, of course, one of the main things that drives readership is the credibility of the news outlet. But we don't really see that hardly ever in Wyoming, and when it happens, retractions show up on page A27 in the bottom corner where nobody is going to pay any attention to it. But recently, the Open Range Record has been able to force two different media outlets into printing a retraction. Now, the first one was Wildfile, which they published an article that said some really nasty things about our journalist, Don Marquardt. Wildfile accused her of going onto the House floor while having press credentials. But that's not true, because she didn't have press credentials until the following Wednesday. So anyway, I wrote let's just call it a stern email to the editor of Wildfile, and I said, you have until 2:00 to issue a retraction, and if you don't, I'm running with an article saying that you're lying about another journalist. Now, to their credit, Matt Copeland did send me an email, and he was very apologetic, and he did correct it. Although the notice of the correction was at the bottom of the article where nobody would actually see it, but they did correct it. Now, the other one was from none other than Claire McFarland at the Cowboy. Now, if you go look at the Open Range Record, which I'll go there real quick, just so I can, let's see here, let's go there. And so I can tell you exactly what happened here. So the article on the Open Range Record is entitled Senate File 101, The Truth About What the Governor, Lobbyists, and the Media Are Saying. And now the article says updated, with a little note at the top, an editor's note, if you will. And the editor's note says the Cowboy State Daily has updated the article referenced in this piece. Though, instead of making the article update obvious, the Cowboy State Daily posted a notice at the bottom of the piece. Below is a screenshot of that notice. And the notice that Claire McFarland put on this article says, correction, an earlier version of this story confused the criminal and civil portions of the bill. Well, while that is true, it doesn't really encapsulate everything about it. You see, the Cowboy State Daily made a number of different errors in that. The probably the biggest one, And by the way, this bill is probably going to be vetoed by the governor for the very reasons that I'm about to tell you. That it has been completely mischaracterized by the Cowboy State Daily and by others in the media. And here's the biggest one. This is from the original article from the Cowboy State Daily. Quote, in addition to potential misdemeanors for officers, it would impose a $50,000 civil penalty per violation on federal and state officers and would remove sovereign immunity from those agents. Now, there's a couple of problems with that because the bill didn't do that. The bill would impose a civil penalty of $50,000 on the law enforcement agency. So this sheriff's department, the police department, the Wyoming DCI, whomever, unconstitutionally takes somebody's guns away. The other one of the other problems with it is we can't impose a civil penalty on federal officers. And the third problem with this sentence, I mean, how could you screw up one sentence so many ways? But they did it. Here's the third problem, that it would remove sovereign immunity from those agents. Agents do not have sovereign immunity. Agents have qualified immunity. So sovereign immunity relates to a government agency. Qualified immunity relates to an individual officer. And the bill itself, several times it says this. So the way the article characterizes it is this is almost intentional, almost intentionally misleading you about the bill. But, however, they did correct the article, and it completely removes all of that discussion about the penalties in the bill. So good on them for correcting the article. But here's the thing. When you do that, media outlets should be upfront about when they make a mistake. So far, the Open Range Record has had to do that once. And here's the difference in what we did. We lead with our mistakes. If we make an error, we're upfront about it, and we tell you, hey, I screwed this up, and here's the correct answer. That's the way media organizations ought to handle it. That's the way I've always been on Cowboy State Politics, though it doesn't happen very often because I'm documented to be almost always right, 99% of the time. But when I am wrong on those rare occasions, I come right out at the beginning of the program and tell you, hey, I was wrong about this. Here's the right information. But what media outlets do is they publish an inconspicuous notice at the bottom of an article where probably nobody is going to see it. And then they've also, gone in and they stealth edited the article so that if you don't read all the way to the bottom, you don't know what they did. And you know what? This is a perfect place to talk about one of my favorite features on the Open Range Record. And I don't think it's been used. And frankly, I don't know if anybody even knows that it's there. But if you open up any article on the website or in the mobile apps, by the way, we have an Android and an iOS app. If you haven't downloaded those, go get those. Totally free. You are going to start seeing some ads in there, not the annoying ones that you see on the side of every website that are just hideous. But just business advertising, you'll start seeing that. But other than that, it's it's totally free, and you just have to look at a couple ads. That's it. They don't even pop up. They're just in the articles. But anyway, so where was I? Yeah, so the feature that I think is really cool is I built in there a button that will produce a PDF of whatever it is that you're reading. And so there's actually a button down there that says, hey, print this article. There's two of them, actually. There's one that says print, and there's one that says print a PDF. And the reason the PDF button is there is so that you can hold us accountable, so that you can push that, you can print a PDF of whatever it is that we've published, and you have a copy of it, the original article. So in the event, not that we would do this, but in the event that an article gets edited, you've got the original version right there, and I made it super easy for you. So all you got to do is push that button, and I wish you would. Now, the Cowboy State Daily article about the guns, or about the SEPA bill, I had to use the Wayback Machine and go back a couple days and print the original article. So a real pain in the butt to hold these people accountable. But that's what we've got to do, my friends, because if Checkgate taught us anything, and excuse me, let me back up. I even hate that term, because it's not comparable to Watergate. Nowhere, we could call it, it's not even a boondoggle. It was the Czech sham, perhaps. But anyway, If that taught us anything, it would be that we have to hold the media accountable. Because if you don't, they're going to run with stories and they're going to mischaracterize things. And in some cases, they're going to outright lie. And so you have to be able to hold them accountable. So on the rare occasions that you actually hear me say this, good job, Claire, for correcting your article, though I think that you could be a little bit more conspicuous about it and just admit when you make a mistake. But of course, the all-powerful Wyoming media, they're not going to do that because, they and here's the stupid thing about it. If somebody portrays themselves as always being right, that will never make a mistake, they have zero credibility because everybody makes errors. Everybody does. Even the best journalists make errors. But here's the difference. The best journalists admit it. They publish a retraction. The next article that comes out, they say, hey, we screwed up. Here's the right information. The best journalists do that. I do that, and, I think everybody should. But, I guess some credit where some credit is due on this. All right, so one of the bills that the governor did allow to become law, and he did sign it, was the heartbeat bill. Now, this is interesting because one of the very first bills that Governor Gordon vetoed when he first became governor was the Infant Born Alive bill. Now, that was a bill that mandated if an abortion failed that you had to care for the child. Now, think about how hideous that is, right? So the governor had a piece of legislation on his desk that said you got to care for little kids when there's a botched abortion, and he vetoed it. Holy crap, my friends. Well, now he's evidently turned the corner and he signed the abortion bill, or the heartbeat bill. But he did so in a pretty interesting fashion that he sent a letter to the legislature. Let me see if I can pull this up here. I've got it. Here we go. Yeah. So let me just read you parts of this letter. Quote, despite the upright moral intentions behind House Enrolled Act 29, that's the heartbeat bill, I believe this act very likely puts us back in the all too familiar and unfortunate territory of pro-life litigation. It does not offer the durable solution I had hoped for, and it does not put the issue before the Wyoming people, from whom Article 1 of our Wyoming Constitution, all governmental power derives. Probably the first time that guy's ever looked at that phrase in the Constitution. Anyway, those efforts were shot down in favor of a sole remaining and flawed act. Nonetheless, I'm signing the Human Heartbeat Act, Enrolled Act 29, into law with both support and concern. Life is sacred. So wait a minute. He calls the piece of legislation completely flawed, and then he says, but I'm going to sign it anyway. The central obstacle remains that the Wyoming, and I'm quoting now, Wyoming Supreme Court's interpretation of Article 1, Section 38 of the Wyoming Constitution in State v. Johnson. And what the Wyoming Supreme Court did is they wrote into Wyoming law that abortion is health care. That doesn't exist anywhere in Wyoming statutes. That was created by the Supreme Court. It is one of the more blatant examples of judicial activism that we've seen from our court, and that's saying a lot because they do a lot of lawmaking at the Supreme Court building. Quote, whether we agree with that interpretation or not, it is the current constitutional framework governing abortion policy in Wyoming. Thus, it will take a constitutional amendment or narrowly crafted solution to define that balance. We cannot ignore or disregard the legal complexity of abortion policy in Wyoming. The state must protect unborn life while acting carefully within the constraints of the Wyoming Constitution and court decisions. Interesting, though, by the governor signing this, it is implicit in his act that he agrees that this bill is unconstitutional. If it weren't, it would have been incumbent upon the governor to veto it. But of course, he couldn't do that, politics being what they are. And so, essentially, he's just saying, hey, I don't really agree with this, but I don't want my name on another pro-life bill that I vetoed. He goes on. The Heartbeat Act recognizes the moral significance of a detectable heartbeat to protect unborn children at an earlier stage of development, a moral aspiration shared by many across the state, including myself. Where the act does not align to my pro-life stance is in concern for specific vulnerable populations. And this is the part that I wanted to get to this morning. I have continually identified my position on exceptions for women facing pregnancy caused by rape or incest, the risk of a woman's life, or substantial, irreparable, or irreversible physical impairment. So let's take those one at a time, and let's start with the last one first. It is really rare, really rare nowadays with our current medical technology that a complication comes about in pregnancy. Now, I mean, let me rephrase that. During childbirth. Okay, so it does happen. In fact, somebody that I knew died in childbirth, but it's really rare. And if it is a case if it is a choice by the doctor of, saving the life of the child or saving the life of the mother, that's not a question of abortion anyway. That's a question of triage. I don't know of a single doctor that's going to look at that and say, well, gee, maybe this is an ethical question of abortion. No. He looks at it and says, which one can I save the easiest? I mean, which one do I have the best chance of saving? I mean, I'm sure every doctor would like to save both lives, but in the event that you couldn't, he's just gonna make a judgment call and say, I have the best chance of saving this one. So that's not really a question of abortion. Rather, it's a question of triage. Now, the other one, rape and incest, now those are really difficult situations, and I don't pretend to understand them, but here's what I do know. Nowhere else in Wyoming or U.S. law do we punish the victim of a crime instead of the offender. And I'm talking specifically about rape and incest here. There's nowhere else in law that we say, because of the criminal act of this person over here, we're going to kill a completely innocent person over here. That doesn't make any sense. We do not punish the victims for the actions of a criminal. We don't do that in our country. Innocent life is sacred, and the governor should recognize this straight out. I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't. This is a flawed argument to say there has to be exceptions, because you're allowing the death of an innocent human being. And so, the exceptions that the governor mentions in his letter, either he hasn't really thought them through, or B, he's just towing a political line, which I think it's probably the latter. Anyway, the governor signed it, and it is law right now for as long as it takes for the abortion clinic to file a lawsuit, because that's what's going to happen. They're going to appeal to the same court. They'll probably file the lawsuit in Jackson in front of Melissa Owens, or at least they'll probably try. Though, Owens did kick back one of their lawsuits back to Natrona County, which is where the abortion clinic is at. But they are going to file a lawsuit, and it is going to take them a while. And so, at least for the next couple of weeks, abortion is illegal in the state of Wyoming, past the detection of a heartbeat. And just think about how many babies will have been saved in that short amount of time. I don't know what the statistics are on that baby killing factory down there in Casper, but my guess is we'll probably save at least a couple. And the Supreme Court has no business writing Wyoming law, though they do that all the time. So anyway, he signed it, and it is law right now, and no doubt it will be appealed. Let's go ahead and take our next break, and we'll continue with the program after that. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm David Iverson, Wyoming's conservative voice. I'm glad to be back home, my friends, if only for a day. That's right. The next 2 days on the program, I'll be traveling the highways and byways again, but I'll be back on Friday and hopefully won't have to go anywhere anytime soon because, traveling the state, while I do enjoy it, that trip to Cheyenne, I got to tell you, it just wears on me. And I'm from Johnson County. We haven't trusted Cheyenne since 1892, and nobody else should either. Your liberty is never more imperiled than when the legislature is in session, and that's absolutely the case, my friends. So one of the other bills that the governor allowed to become law without his signature, and I guess in the end it doesn't really matter because it's law anyway, is the recalibration bill. This is the first time in 20 years, I think, if not 20, it's been a really long time, that the legislature has passed a recalibration bill, which it is the legislature is obligated to pass one every 5 years, but they haven't until this year. Now, there are a number of people that can claim credit for this, most notably the conservatives, the people that were in charge of the House of Representatives, but not the liberals in the House. Not the redcoats, because why, you might ask? Well, the redcoats have been in charge of the House of Representatives for 40 years, at least that. We've never really had a conservative legislature, no matter how much Tom Lubnow and his cohorts and Steve Harshman and Eric Barlow and Albert Chicom Sommers want to claim that they did. They didn't. The truth is, government grew exponentially under all of them, and they didn't pass a recalibration bill at all. Well, now we have one, controversial as it may be, but one of the more important provisions in the recalibration bill is that classroom money has to be used in the classroom. Now, that sounds pretty common sense to all of us, because we all have, most of us have, not me, of course, most of us have a mistaken impression of how schools are funded. Because, in our lives, money that is meant for bills has to go to bills. Money that is meant for food has to go to food. Money that is left over and you can play with, fun money, stupid money, as a good friend of mine once called it, well, then you can, that's disposable income. But school funding doesn't work that way. In fact, the legislature just gives every school district a big giant chunk of cash, and they can do whatever they want with it. Well, up until now, anyway. The legislature did make recommendations as to what that money could be used for, but in the end, school districts really didn't have to pay any attention to that, and they could spend their cash spend your cash however they wanted to. Well, now with this recalibration bill, money that is meant for the classroom has to stay in the classroom. Now, let me just tell you how far in the last, 30, 40 years, we've strayed away from that. At last count, in Wyoming, there are 800 teachers that you and I are paying for that do not exist. It's absolutely true, my friends. When you look at the numbers, the amount of teaching positions that the legislature authorized or that they provided money for over the years, it adds up to 800 positions that were never filled. And what school districts do is they take the cash from those teaching positions and then they use it on other things like, administrative salaries and football pads and those sorts of things. And here's a good, and if you talk to any of your school board members, which you should, by the way, here's a really good question to ask them. And just say, now let's assume that you're paying our teachers $100,000. They're not, by the way, not anywhere close. It's probably like 65 or 70 grand if you include benefits and all that. But just use round numbers and say, let's just assume that you're paying our teachers $100,000 and they have a class full of 20 kids. Well, at $21,700 per student, that teacher's salary is paid for with a little under 5 of them. Where is the money for the other 15? Where did it go? Because schools don't pay for transportation. They're reimbursed by the state. Now, of course, the school will argue that, well, no, we don't get reimbursed until the end. Yeah, well, you still get that cash back. They don't pay for buildings. The state pays for that. And so where is the money, the $21,700 per student for the other 15? Where does it go? And the only answer that they can come up with is, well, overhead. Administration and staff. But ask your school board member, the next one you run into, just ask him that question. Hey, where's the rest of our cash? Now, Sheridan County is a perfect example of this because there are 3 school districts in the entire county. Now, one of them is one of the rural school districts over by Claremont and Arvada, and it takes roughly 40 minutes to get there, to get to Claremont from Sheridan. I mean, you can do it in 25 or 30 on a motorcycle, but we'll just say safely about 40 minutes. So that one we understand. But then in Sheridan proper, including Ranchester and Dayton, there's 2 school districts. Now they could fire two of those superintendents. Fire all 3 of them, and then hire one superintendent at $300,000 a year, and they would still save money. Still. At $300,000 a year, they would still save cash. Why? Because when you have 3 different school districts, you have 3 different administration buildings, you have 3 different assistant superintendents, 3 different sets of secretaries, 3 of everything. Now, if you compare Sheridan County to Natrona County, this is a really good comparison. Natrona County, there's lots more people that live there, and they only have 1 school district. They have 2 high schools, Natrona and Kelly Walsh. They have a number of middle schools, and they've got some outlying schools like in Midwest. So don't tell me that it's not possible. Well, the reason why we've had the administration in Wyoming schools explode in recent years is because there was no handle on the cash. There was they weren't held accountable to how they spent your cash. Well, that's different now because there are silos that the legislature created that said that classroom money has to be spent in the classroom. An absolutely great idea. Conservatives have been trying to do this for a really long time. Now, it's not going to solve the school funding nightmare that we're in because every year funding for Wyoming schools goes up at least $200 million automatically. They're called escalators. They're built into the school funding model, and the legislature doesn't have to do anything for that amount of cash to increase. So every year, without any act by the legislature, school funding goes up about $200 million. It's probably a little bit more than that. That was a number I heard. I think it was last year before. Anyway, but good on the legislature for enacting some silos for the money. It's actually going to really help Wyoming students and teachers. And it's not the teachers that are at fault for any of this stuff. It's the administration that is to blame. I mean, you can't claim that you're spending $150,000 on a superintendent and you're paying your teacher a little bit north of 40, and that's okay, and then complain about the funding of teachers, because it was last legislative session that the legislature passed an 8.5% raise for all school staff, all of them, 8.5%. And there was only one school district that actually gave a raise, and they did more than 8%. It was like right around 10. The rest of them, yeah, they didn't come anywhere close to giving out that 8.5% raise. So school districts in the state don't have any argument that teachers are underpaid. That one is out the window because they're the ones that chose not to give a raise when they absolutely were given the money. But there again, we didn't have silos. And so that cash was given to school districts, and then it got used on all sorts of different stuff. No doubt scoreboards for the football team and you name it. But, the only way that we get a handle on our state spending is that if we hold these elected people accountable. And the only way to do that is to elect people that have the political courage to hold school districts accountable and to face the leftist Wyoming Education Association. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics Live, Wyoming's most listened to conservative program. Documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Well, my friends, I love it when you leave comments during the show, but one of them, Mark says your YouTube and Open Range feed are offline. Not on my end, so I'm not exactly sure. I did have a comment, and it was like a couple of weeks ago, and a viewer of the show had the same thing. Hey, it's not working, and he restarted the device, and it worked just fine. So not exactly sure what's going on there, but the feed on the Open Range record is working just fine, or at least it does. It looks like it from my end. So have you noticed that there is a circus going on in the race for the United States House of Representatives in Wyoming? Have you noticed that? There's like 27 candidates. Okay, so there's not. There's 5 now. So we have Secretary of State Chuck Gray, Jillian Balow, who abandoned her post as Superintendent of Public Instruction in Wyoming to take a job working for Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. Interestingly enough, it was exactly 4 years to the day that she announced her resignation here, that she announced her run for Congress. So Jillian Balow, you and me, we're going to have a talk. Call me. Have your people call my people. You got some splaining to do about, all sorts of things that you've been doing. Pictures with Liz Cheney. Got to tell you, those aren't going to work very good for you in the election. So there's Chuck Gray, Jillian Balow, and then there's the aforementioned Reed Reisner, who is, we got to hand it to him, the only person able to unite the entire state of Wyoming against him. And then we have David Geralt, which I don't know too much about him, but I am diligently working on getting him on the program. So before too long, we're going to have a discussion with Mr. Geralt. And I can't wait to talk to him, find out all about him. Everything I've read sounds pretty good, man. Army Ranger. We'll find out who, what his feelings on state government and all that are. And now we have another guy running for the House of Representatives, and he's from Casper, from the Oil City News, the news outlet that misquoted our pal Ken Pendergraft, completely took him out of context to lie about him. But anyway, the Oil City News says Casper native Kevin Christensen announces his run for Wyoming's U.S. House of Representatives seat. And I quote, Casper native and military veteran Kevin Christensen is planning to run for U.S. House of Representatives seat as a Republican. Okay, so this is an interesting phrase, and I've seen it a couple of different places in announcements. One of them was in a Senate race announcement, and the other one is right here. We're going to run as a Republican. The article does not say Kevin Christensen is a Republican. It says he's going to run as a Republican. As opposed to what? A Democrat? A Libertarian? A complete communist? I don't know anything about this guy, but why is the Oil City News using the phrase he's going to run as a Republican? The truth is, my friends, that words mean things.
2 + 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Words do mean things. And when a news article says we're going to run as a Republican, all of us are left to ask the question, okay, so what are you right now? If you're running as a Republican, are you a Democrat? Are you a Libertarian? Are you a space alien? What are you? But most of the time when you see that phrase, that's your first clue that perhaps maybe the person that's announcing is not necessarily really a Republican. Now, there's more in the piece here that may lead us to that conclusion. And I continue. He led, quoting now, he led the High Plains district of the BLM, Wyoming, from 2019 to 2025. Now, who, pray tell, was in charge of the country from 2019 to, say, 2025? Who was that? Who would have appointed Mr. Kevin Christensen to be the head of the High Plains district of the BLM? Oh, yeah, that's Joe Biden. So how conservative could he have been for Joe Biden and his administration? Because we know that Sleepy Joe was not running the entire thing. It was all of his minions. So how conservative could this person have been to be nominated by this guy? I don't know if you've seen this video, but I got to show you this before the end of the program. This thing is great. You know, and all of these failed candidates, when there's an opportunity for them to get in front of a microphone, they just can't help themselves. I mean, but so this Kevin Christensen guy was nominated by this fellow. Take a listen.
Well, as a kid, I was a relatively good athlete, a pretty good student, but I stuttered to talk like that. Now, if I told you all earlier when I was a kid I had a cleft palate or a club foot, none of you would have laughed. But it's okay to laugh at stuttering. I'm not being critical of you, but think about it. It's the one place where people think you're stupid. Oh, really? I'm a hell of a lot smarter than most of you.
As if anybody is ever going to believe that. So it was that guy who nominated Kevin Christensen to be the head of the BLM High Plains District for Wyoming. So we have to ask the question then, how is it that he got that appointment from Joe Biden? Because it was obviously not Donald Trump that nominated him. But here's another interesting thing about this, and let me just read to you the last part of this little section in the Oil City News. And it says, so he led the High Plains District of BLM, Wyoming, from 2019 to 2025 under Joe Biden, and is currently working as a facility manager in Denver. in Denver. So he's not working in Wyoming, and I doubt very seriously that he's commuting from even, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's not commuting from Cheyenne. Because that's still, I mean, I don't know when the last time you drove from Cheyenne to Denver was, but it's actually kind of a long ways. It's well over an hour to get there. So I think we can be pretty certain that he's not commuting. And he's certainly not commuting from Casper all the way. So I'm going to reach out to this guy and see if I can get an interview. And frankly, I'm going to get an interview with all of them. Probably not Reed Reisner because nobody really cares what he has to say. But the rest of them, sure. Now another thing about this, and this is a peculiarity with the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution does not mandate that you have to live in the state that you are running for Congress for. It's crazy, right? This is how we got Liz Cheney. Now, she did buy a house in Wilson, Wyoming, which is basically Jackson. And she did own a house there. But she didn't raise her kids in Wyoming. And really, she lived in her mansion in Virginia. And so the Constitution, I mean, that's what governs federal elections. And there's no mandate in there that you actually have to live in the state that you are running to represent in Congress. So I think Mr. Kevin Christensen, he's got some splaining to do, just like Jillian Belo. Just like all of them, really. I mean, they all throw out that word conservative. What exactly does that mean? By the way, on the Open Range Record, and there is a great article about what does it actually mean when you call yourself a Wyoming conservative. You should go check it out. Because the people that call themselves Wyoming conservatives have not really done a lot of great stuff for this state. Now, I'm not talking about people like Ken Pendergraft and John Bear. I mean, they really are conservatives. But the folks that say that they're traditional Republicans or they're Wyoming conservatives as opposed to some other type of conservative. I mean, it's like if Minnesota came up with a cure for cancer, these idiots down here in Wyoming would say, well, no, we don't want a Minnesota cure for cancer. We've got to have our own. I mean, that's how stupid that argument is. But, I mean, you should go look at that article. It's really great. It runs through a lot of the economic statistics of what Wyoming conservatives, traditional Republicans, have brought to your pocketbook, and none of it is good. Bloated state spending and bloated education budget, and not a really good. And here's the thing, right? All of these traditional Republicans and man, all you got to do is watch any of the budget negotiations. People like John Bear would get up and say, look, we have to cut this. Here's why. If we don't, the projection is we're going to be in the red in a couple of years. And that's absolutely the truth, my friends. We will. I mean, if we do not cut the budget way more than what was actually cut. I mean, this year, we really didn't get all that many cuts at all. Nope, pretty much we gave them all back and gave them all back to the governor for a number of different reasons. But it was the Wyoming conservatives, the traditional Republicans, that ran over 200 amendments. Most of them were the same. And I mean, it's most of the conservatives in the House. I mean, they held together, but you got to admit, like 200 amendments over and over and over and over and over. I mean, it's like the beatings will continue until morale improves. But here's the other part of it too. You've really got to hand it to the Joint Appropriations Committee. Well, the House version of the Joint Appropriations Committee, because the Senate didn't do really anything. They were just going to go with whatever the governor said anyway. But you've really got to hand it to them. At least they were able to expose the bloat and the glut that is in Wyoming's budget. And so, if you get a chance to talk to any of them, Jeremy Haroldson, Bill Elliman, Ken Pendergraft, John Bear, Abby Angelos, Trey Sherwood, though she's a Democrat, she would probably talk to you about it too. Scott Smith, and all of them. I mean, you should really spend some time talking with them because they'll clearly explain what a dire situation we're in. All right, my friends. Well, that'll pretty much do it for today's program. It's been fun being back in the studio, even if only for one day. We'll be, like I told you, I'll be out on the road tomorrow and the next day. And so we'll still have a program. We'll still broadcast from wherever it is that I'm going to be. And anyway, so for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Thanks for watching, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow.